Welcome to the Banner of Truth magazine podcast, where each week we bring you selected content from the magazine for your encouragement and edification. Well, greetings and welcome to a special bonus episode of the Banner of Truth magazine podcast. We're going to shed a little bit of extra light and behind-the-scenes content with you about the third video in our Covenanter Story series, which has just come out in the last few days. For various reasons, what was intended to be Covenanter February has stretched now into Covenanting March, and we're going to continue with this theme as we release the final video next week, Lord willing. There's no doubt that all four of the stories that we tell in the video mini-series are moving. But as a production team, we found the third story, that of John Brown of Priesthill, to be particularly so. His murder, far from any centre of civilization, the killing of a quiet family man and faithful Christian, cannot fail to move. In this mini episode, I'm going to share a little bit of detail about the place itself, Priesthill, and what it takes to get there, and then we're going to read a poem on a visit to Priesthill, and hope that that will be of interest to you. For the filming, we travelled up to Muirkirk and then to Priesthill from that village in November on a particularly cold day when there had been snowfall in the preceding few days. The spot is lonely and boggy at the best of times, and November, it turns out, is not the best of times to visit the spot. I'm going to read a little bit of an account which was published in 1875 by the Reverend J.H. Thompson about his visit, which was made in June time. From the churchyard, we set off for Priesthill. We took the road that runs to the northwest from the church, and in a quarter of a mile joins that for Straven and Glasgow. This road we followed for nearly 2 miles, when, as directed, we struck off to the east by a path through the moor. For nearly 1.5 miles we walked on without seeing a single person. The sight of what, in the distance, seemed to be a monument led us astray nearly 1/2 mile, but the supposed monument turned out to be a pile of stones that had been erected for the purposes of the Ordnance Survey. We speedily retraced our steps and came down to the road at a place where were the ruins of a deserted farmhouse. Some 200 yards farther was a tenanted farmhouse, and here we were told the monument was 1/2 mile away in the moor. 1/2 mile was soon got over, but in our haste we had diverged from the right path, and went 1/2 mile farther, but no monument was to be seen. On turning back and looking round us, there, in a hollow 1/2 mile from us, we saw a white-looking object, which must be what we were in search of. It was so, and in 10 minutes we were standing beside it. A more lonely and desolate spot than where the monument stands can scarcely be conceived. Not a person, not even a house, was to be seen. Although the season was so far advanced, the moor retained much of the bleakness of winter. The grass had but partially, through the frosts that in such upland districts run into June, put on its green dress. But while man was not to be seen, all around us were the sounds of life. The lark was in full song and was filling the air with music. The lambs were sporting about, and their bleating not unpleasantly mingled with the carols coming from far overhead. Now, the next bit of Thompson's account is of interest because the poem we're going to read suggests that it's possible to trace where walls once stood. Now, as we visited the spot in Priesthill, it's not so easy to see traces of that, although perhaps we weren't careful enough to look. But Thompson seems to suggest that for him, presumably visiting in the 1870s, there were some traces. Here's what he says. The house where John Brown lived must have fallen, and its materials been removed many years ago, for not a trace of it now exists, except perhaps a deeper green on the sward, where it or its garden must have stood. The stone over his remains lies flat. It is 5 feet in length by 2.5 feet in breadth. It is enclosed by a dyke 4 feet in height, sufficiently high to prevent the sheep or cattle getting within. And that's where we'll leave Thompson's account. Of course, if none of this means much to you, I do encourage you to go and watch the third video, John Brown of Priesthill, to get a visual sense for what it looks like now. We're going to turn now to a poem entitled A Visit to Priesthill. This is from the pen of George Paulin, who was born in 1812 in Berwickshire and died in 1898. A Visit to Priesthill. A gowan and a buttercup I plucked from where he stood that morn beside his cottage door, begirt with men of blood. A place amid the lonely hills, a moorland solitude. There you may trace where walls were once, the hallen and the hearth, where John at eve would lift his soul above the cares of earth, and in the page of wisdom read redemption's wondrous birth. And there's the little garden plot, in which, the week toil over, on Saturday's sweet eve he'd sit and list the lonely plover, and watch the sun-warped veil of mist grey Wardlaw's summit cover, and muse on him who died to save, who formed the human soul, who made the moorland and the hill, who bade the waters roll, and then in David's sweetest lay his might he would extol. He knew the mighty God was his, who hears the seraphim. He knew the Saviour heard his song, and that was all for him. And then his cup of joy was full unto the brim. And when the foe came fierce with hate, and curses volleyed fast, he stood with all his loved ones near, like oak before the blast, stood leaning on his covenant God, nor shrank, nor looked aghast. He knelt, and Claver's death shot rang, his brains were scattered there, and calmly Isabel Weir bent down, with inly breathed prayer, and gathered them, while bitter jest rang through the morning air. But far above the moorland dim, John's spirit soared away, with angel convoy up to heaven, as glad and fair as they. The martyr's harp was tuned on high to a melodious lay. And as we mused, my friends and I, upon the tombstone hoary, its record of the martyr times and of the covenant story, we on the light affliction thought, and endless weight of glory. Indeed, it's a very special place, a very quiet place to visit. And if you are thinking of going, the way to do so is to proceed on that northbound road from Muirkirk and then to turn right onto the track that goes down and is still marked to Priesthill Farm. If you do follow that track up in a vehicle, please be sure to park in a place that won't inconvenience the farmer, because it's still a working farm. And when you head up past Priesthill's farm and get to the gate on the border of the moor, what you're looking to do is to proceed about 15 paces to where you see the beginning of an ATV or a four-wheeler track. If you look at the map, that track takes you to the left of the most direct route to the monument, but you nevertheless need to take that wide curve to the left that will bend round until you reach a high ridge. Once you follow that track for about half a mile, you should be able to see along the ridge line the place to get to the monument. Do make sure to wear appropriate footwear, as there is a stream to be crossed. We'll link in the show notes to the martyr graves of Scotland and to the volume of poetry from which A Visit to Priesthill is drawn. Thank you for listening to the Banner of Truth magazine podcast. To subscribe to the magazine in print or digital formats, or both, see the show notes or visit banneroftruth.org.